then being able to fulfill those needs and wants. Now, being able to fulfill those needs and wants does require understanding. It requires market research. It also involves knowing what to do to fulfill those needs and wants. And then fundamentally, it's at a profit, especially if it's a commercial enterprise. Even if it's an NGO, profit here could be what the business goals are. So already from this definition, we see that marketing has a critical role in any organization, whether it be a commercial enterprise or whether it be a non-for-profit. And that automatically assumes that marketing is involved in leadership. And when we speak about leadership here, when I talk about leadership here, it's not just hierarchical, it's not just about position. It's in terms of the process, it's in terms of how a marketer is able to influence decisions and influence actions for the good of the business and ultimately about fulfillment of customer needs and wants at a profit. So let me repeat that. So from a perspective of leadership, it's not just about your position or your title. It's not necessarily about hierarchical, even though that is relevant. It's ultimately about how marketers are able to influence decisions and actions that help an organization fulfill customer needs and wants at a profit or achieving those business goals. And business leadership encompasses strategic decisions on people in terms of the organizational goal, operations, management, and ultimately performance. So regardless of your position or grade level in any organization, business leadership involves these decisions. Yes, when a person is more senior organization, the onus is greater. But from my experience, leadership is not just about your position or you're a senior person. As a marketer, you can actually influence critical decisions no matter what level you are. And so what we'll be discussing is how you can achieve that as a marketer, regardless of your level in hierarchy. And arising from what I have said, therefore, marketing is or should be at the heart of any business, driving customer value and competitive advantage for the good growth of the business. Having established that, what do I see as the state of marketing today? Not just in Nigeria, but across board. And for those of us who read far and wide, you probably have heard that marketing is in some ways at crossroads. There's a lot of evolution shifts that are happening marketing and the expectations of businesses on the marketing function. So the question is in boardrooms, and I use boardrooms here as a metaphor, at leadership levels, are brand and marketing decisions rigorously analyzed? The question is, what impact does marketing have on company performance and shareholder value? Or how are marketers showing the impact that marketing has on company performance and shareholder value? Because ultimately, for a lot of organizations, for every organization, it's about performance, about shareholder value. And then the third thing to think about as we go on is, how can marketing be a proactive driver rather than a passive passenger in businesses? So the operating phrase here is how marketers can be in the driving seat and not necessarily be reactive in driving business. So the question for us is, as marketers, asking ourselves, how strong are marketers in leadership today in business? And again, remember that my context is not just talking about leadership based on hierarchy or position or title or designation. It's really about how marketers at different levels are able to influence decisions and actions that help to achieve the objectives of the organizations, fulfill customer expectations. And as we know, marketing builds brands. It helps to gain and retain customers. But one of the things that I'm finding in today's marketing is that there's an over-indexing, a greater emphasis than required about advertising and promotions. There's a tendency in today's marketing world to think that marketing is only about advertising and promotions. And when I talk about advertising and promotions, it includes digital marketing. So I come from what I call the old school, that marketing basically is 4 Ps, right? Classically. So it's about product development, product management, service development, service management, and I'll use the words product and service interchangeably. It's about pricing. It's about understanding pricing. It's about understanding place strategy. That's about distribution and availability. And then ultimately, yes, the 4th P about promotions. But today I find that marketing seems to over-focus on that last P of promotions and not getting enough knowledge about product management, about pricing management, and also distribution, which are really key in terms of driving brand performance. And so whether you work in an advertising company or a marketing communications company, or you're involved in social media, it's important that while you might be a specialist in those areas, it's important to also have a sense of understanding about product management, about pricing, and about distribution, because they have a critical role in what you will do, even on the promotional side. So, for example, you can run a Google ad, you can run ads about a brand, but if the brand is not present where the customer, the target market can buy them, then your advertising will be wasted. If the pricing is not right, your advertising could be ineffective. If there's something about the product quality that you're unaware of, that could have an impact on the performance of the brand. So it's important that even if you are not directly involved in distribution as a salesperson, it's important that you at least have a basic understanding of that technique. Okay. So having established that, we can then progress to say what impact, therefore, is the current play having in terms of marketers being in leading roles in the organization. Again, I'll keep on reiterating, not just about the hierarchy alone. It's about how you're able to influence decisions and actions. And you will find that in a lot of companies today, when there are difficulties, when they're looking for where to cut costs, marketing is often a first point of contact, right? And that's because a lot of business leaders don't always recognize the critical role that marketing plays in creating customer-centric value and driving shareholder returns. So there's a tendency to see marketing as an expense rather than an investment. And therefore, for us as marketers, it's going to be incumbent on us as part of driving leadership that we get the organizations that we work with and beyond the organizations we work with to see that marketing is an investment and not an expense. But to be able to achieve that, it means that we should to see and evaluate and have metrics that show the ROI, the return on investment of our marketing initiatives. So I'm going to share in the next 2 slides why I think that marketing arrived at the current crossroads. And it's been a long time coming. And as I share this, I'm hoping that you will be reflecting and saying, look, okay, so if this is what has led to this point, doing the corollary should help marketing to get even more stronger in leadership. Okay, so think of the next 2 slides of the corollary. Think around the corollary. That therefore, if we do something different, marketers can better position as business leaders. So one is that a lot of companies forget the primary goal, that ultimately delivering value to customers is what you gain in profit. So for marketers to be, as business leaders, we need to be driving that agenda within organizations, that ultimately it's is about customer, delivering value to the customer. And once the customer is happy, again, reflecting back to that basic definition of marketing, once they're happy, then you're able to gain profit in return. Secondly, there's a lot of short-term pressure for businesses across the world now in seeking to deliver shareholder value on the short term, achieve short-term goals, achieve revenues and profit targets. So there's pressure on CEOs and finance directors for quick returns. So for marketers to position as business leaders, you need to be able to balance that short-term pressure with long-term goals and get the organization, the CEOs and the finance directors to see how they can balance short-term focus with long-term impact. And then, as I said earlier on, there's a lot of increased inward focus, cost cutting, right? For a milk brand, for example, you may see that the sachets may be more of air than product. So you have cost cutting measures to try and improve margins. Now, marketers need to be the representatives of organizations, of the customer within the organization. I recall in a previous role where we had reformulated the product, but in terms of reformulation of the product, the factory was not delivering the expected quality, the minimum standards expected. And we were trying to sell this, but there was a difficulty in selling it. Now, as brand manager at that point, I was a representative of the customer, of the consumer, of the target market within the company. And I said, this does not meet expectation. And therefore, we should not be expected to sell this in the market. Now, the factory guys and every other person who are saying, look, we'll have a lot of losses if we don't continue to produce. And I said, on the long term, you would have even more losses if you continue to sell a subpar product quality. And so I insisted that until they fixed the quality, I, as brand manager, could not guarantee sales. And because one had mind to position oneself as the eye of the customer, of the consumer in the company, the senior team, management team, agreed with me. And believe it or not, they stopped the factory from producing until the quality issues were resolved. Now, that's about influence. That's about how you influence decisions and actions. All right. So it's important that you're, as a marketer, as a business leader, that you're representing the customer and you're able to be the advocate for the customer. A fourth issue is that there's a financial and pricing disconnect from a lot of marketers within organizations. There's a tendency for marketing people to want to leave financial matters to finance teams. Yet, business is money. Business ultimately is about money, finances. And it's in trying to increase your influence and leadership within the organization. It's important that the marketer is involved in things that have to do with financial decisions, things around pricing, things about gross margins, and also understand financial literacy. So let me quickly say something I'm going to say later on as well. So it's important as marketers, if we're going to be stronger business leaders, that beyond our understanding of marketing and our expertise in marketing, that we have some basic literacy about financial matters. We need to be able to at least understand basic profit and loss statements. Profit and loss statements in terms of revenues, costs, and profit at the minimum. And then as you get there, also understand issues around balance sheets and how to read balance sheets, because cash flow is also a key part of business performance. So for a marketer to grow as a business leader, get involved in matters financial, improve financial literacy. Another 4 factors that have resulted in marketers not necessarily to be in strong positions as business leaders is that we have to be more proactive in terms of advocating for customers, and I think I've already spoken to this. All right, so I will not spend much more time on that. Then marketers need to build relationships within the organizations. The case that I gave you was because I was able to succeed because I had already developed some measure of influence in the organization. But it didn't happen overnight. In fact, there are some points in my career where, along with other marketing people, those in other functions considered us as aloof. In fact, I was once told by a senior manager that I should get off my high horse in a conversation that we were having. So it's important that marketing people are not aloof in the relationship you have with other functions within the organization. So that's important. Leadership ultimately is about influence. You cannot influence people if you don't get on well with them. You cannot get things that you might want to do as a marketer if you don't have a positive relationship. So build positive relationships. And I'm still going to repeat this as we go on. And then, just as I've said about finance, we should also know basics about other functions. So I'm not saying you must be an expert on every other function. Yes, you must first of all be an expert in marketing, but know basic about other functions so that you can either put yourself in their shoes or you can ask the right questions. Let me give one of my favorite examples. So several years ago, I was managing the Bonvita brand, and we wanted to put vitamin C into Bonvita. But my colleagues in technical and research and development said that it wasn't possible because the process for making Bonvita required some very high temperatures, and vitamin C could not survive in those high temperatures. But for me, from a marketing perspective, it was important we had vitamin C in Bonvita because that will have been a USP for the brand, because no other brand, including Milo, had vitamin C. It was also important for us because we could put in vitamin A and vitamin E. Now, putting vitamin C would mean that we had what we wanted to call the ACE of food drinks: vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E. So that was important. So after a year, they were still saying it was not possible without vitamin C. But one day I was just reflecting about it, and it occurred to me that vitamin C was ascorbic acid. And if vitamin C is ascorbic acid, it meant that it could appear as a salt format, for those who remember their chemistry. If it could appear in salt format as ascorbate, why couldn't it withstand high temperatures? So the following day, I went to the office, went to my R&D colleagues, PhD holders, and I took them through my thought process. And they looked like me like I was from outer space. But the thought process was valid. And something we had been debating about for 1 year, we succeeded in getting vitamin C in ascorbate format into Bonvita. But it required me at least having some basic understanding. So it's important for marketers that as you build your expertise as marketers, also have some basic understanding about other functions, because it then helps you in terms of influence and leadership. And then the last point here is about perceived cost of marketing, right? It's important for us, if we're going to be stronger business leaders, that we're able to use empirical data to demonstrate successful contribution to the company's top and bottom line and justify the marketing investment. This means, therefore, the place of research. This means the use of analytics is increasingly important. And we're fortunate in this day and age where we have lots of data, access to data. There's artificial intelligence. So we do have access, data mining that we need to do. But one of the ways we can do this and become better marketers and stronger business leaders is that before you do any activity, at least have clear objectives and also indicate how you will measure the performance of what you're doing. So if you're going to run an advertising campaign, what are your objectives? Is it about awareness? Is it about building brand equity? At least have a benchmark of targets. Where are you today? Where do you want to get to? And when do you want to measure over a period of time? So at least have some data, no matter how basic it is, that you can use to justify the marketing investment. As you do that, you then find that you get greater respect and you're seen as a stronger business leader in the organization. So building on that, so I've kind of given you a negative view, but also introducing a bit of a positive perspective to it. Now, so how do you get to be a stronger business leader as a marketer? right? So one is, as business leaders, you need to constantly keep marketing on the board's agenda. Now, even if you are not yet on the board, but you're on your way to board, or even far away from the board, it's about how you keep advocating for marketing and the customer and the consumer within the organization. So for those who are already close to the board, how do you keep advocating for marketing on the board and showing the relevance of marketing on the board, showing the results? As you do that and show the results, then you get greater respect and influence at senior leadership levels. But to do that, what is critical is that marketing needs to have a business mindset. If we're talking about being a business leader, you have to have a business mindset. And that speaks again to what I talked about. Understand financial performance and the key drivers of financial performance. Understand business metrics, the key drivers of business metrics. Issues around revenue, costs, profitability, cash flow. Know the impact of marketing on those activities. And don't just also over focus on marketing. Understand issues around supply chain, and I'm going to come to that about supply chain if you happen to work in the manufacturing or service industry. Even if you're working in advertising, right, or digital marketing or PR, right? Understand those basic business metrics that within your organization and also the clients that you have. And then link your marketing strategies to revenue, profit, and growth. So see yourself as a business manager with both short-term and long-term focus. Don't only speak about long-term focus about brand equity. See how the things that you're doing and the impact it can have on short-term basis. So you have to have that balance. You need to get your CEO, the CEOs, and the finance guys to see that you're also interested and understand the short-term pressures. And therefore, the things that you can bring into play combine both a short-term and a long-term perspective. I always like to say that marketers need to see themselves as general managers, as business managers, right? You are at the hub, at the center, and you're driving the business agenda across board, across functions, right? Some other things that I think are important for us as we want to get to be stronger business leaders. You are the representative. Marketers should be the representative of the customer. It therefore means that you have an understanding of consumers, customers, and competitors. So as marketers, we need to be out on the field. And when I say out on the field, I'm not saying you are necessarily selling every day or going out every day, but you must be close to the market. It shouldn't just be desk research. Get your hands dirty. For when you as a marketer, you are in the field and people know that you're in the field, that you're relating with the trade, you're relating with the target market, it earns respect. And therefore, when you say things, it gives you credibility, right, within the organization. So a marketer should be the bridge between the marketplace and the company. You need to understand the customer needs and wants. How will you develop a product if you don't have understanding that there's a trend out in the market that requires or desires that product? When you launch, again, let me give another personal example. Some of us may be familiar with a brand called Richoco, right? It was launched by Cadbury years ago, and within a year, it became number 3 brand behind Bomcha Milo. But Richoco came about by a brand manager seeing that there was a need in the market for such a brand and made a case for such a brand within the company. And the company launched it, it did well, and was profitable for the business. So imagine the influence that brand manager then began to have within the context of the organization. So deepen market understanding, be close to the market, represent the customer in the company, and then that increases your strength as a leader within the organization. Now, as you do that, obviously what will happen is that the business will grow, and this comes to customer-centric value creation. Business will grow because you're delivering value to customers, you're delivering value to the company, right? You're reflecting customer insights in the company's strategy, which is the example I've given you about Richoco, right? And ultimately, when you do that, it delivers better shareholder returns, and you become even a stronger business leader in terms of perception, all right? And the other third point here is about internal communication and alignment. And some of the things that I've said also speak to that. So how do you build internal support for marketing initiatives within the organization? You embed marketing thinking across the organization. Let them see what's going on in the, let them understand the need to address product development, quality, and even around pricing. I recall in previous roles, when the company wanted to increase price or adjust prices, I could argue that, look, this price is either too high or too low. And because they respected the thinking, they will apply across the business. I've already spoken about using data to show market impact and effectiveness. That's really important. Let me give another example. Another experience, a particular brand was being sold, and this is now speaks to the fact that marketing is not just about advertising or promotions. The company was selling a particular brand to the North because historically that was the belief that the brand did well in the North. But then as brand manager, we got some data that actually showed that real consumption was happening in the eastern part of Nigeria using real life data, retail data. And we used that to persuade the sales head of sales and the sales and marketing director that, look, data tells us otherwise. And using that data, we then changed. And before this time, the brand was not growing, had not grown for 4 years. So using that data, we changed distribution and focused on the East and did some marketing investment in the East. And the brand that had not grown for 4 years, within 6 months, had begun to grow. And within 1 year, it had doubled its sales. So it just speaks to the power of data. And that showed how we were driving leadership using data. And then this point is cross-functional collaboration. Again, like I said, work closely with the different functions in the organization. And I've just used this as examples, right? In your organizations, they may be different, right? But get to know the functions, collaborate with them, and let them understand the role and impact of marketing across all these business functions. Again, I've spoken about developing broader business knowledge, right? And have emotional intelligence, build relationships, right? One of the things that I've had to learn to do over time is be emotionally intelligent in relationships with the different functions. If you want to deliver results, you have to have positive relationships. I had an experience once where 2 brand managers would want to do activations on the field with sales guys. Constantly, brand manager A activations were more successful than brand manager B. When I probed, I found that brand manager A had a more positive relationship with the sales guys, the field marketing guys, and therefore anytime there was any activity from brand manager A, they would apply themselves fully. But brand manager B didn't have a great relationship with them. And anytime they were asked to do activations by brand manager B, they just put it aside or not put their best. Real life story. So it's important that if you're going to be a strong marketing person as a business leader, that you have a strong emotional intelligence, have broader business knowledge, and relate strongly with people cross-functionally. And then finally, as we begin to wrap this up, is building on what I've just said. Networking is key. All right, networking is key. You have to develop the skills to influence people. Remember, leadership is about influence. So develop skills to influence executives and senior leaders. Build strong alliances within organizations, especially with finance people, right? And then even beyond the organizations you work with, build strong networks. Expand your influence beyond the organization or beyond the organization. And then constantly be looking for opportunities to drive innovation and change. But ultimately, if we are going to be respected as a marketer, as a business leader, it's about the degree of professionalism that you bring to play. That means that you as a marketer is fully on board with your role as a marketer. You are the best that you can be within marketing. You understand what it is. You're bringing your best game to play. And as you do that, and the other points that we have given, you then find that a marketer then becomes a stronger business leader. So I would pause at this point in time, and I'll be happy to take on the conversation. Thank you. So thank you. So Amaka, I've done with the presentation. I'll be happy to have the conversation now.
Thank you very much, sir. That's a very insightful section, especially on the perspective on marketing as a leadership function and not just a support role. So now we'll be getting into a short question and answer session. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comment sections now.